welcome back to the Ovens Garage. Today we're working on this 2006 Hyundai Tucson, and today I'll be showing you how to replace the rear parking brake cables, as well as the rear parking brake shoes, as well as the springs associated with it. So we'll do that on both sides, and I'll walk you through that entire process. To do this on both sides, you'll need the spring kit for both sides, the parking brake cable for both sides, and then a set of shoes for both sides. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is remove the brake caliper mount so we can get access to remove this disc where all the drum components are beneath it. I'm going to use a 14mm socket to remove the two bolts in the back side. Both bolts are out. I'll remove the entire brake caliper assembly and just put it up out of the way. Make sure you don't hang it by the brake hose. Now I can remove this disc. Okay, so now we are going to disassemble the old shoes, brake shoes. This is all pretty small stuff, so you should be able to do it with just a set of needle-nose pliers, but I've got these special drum brake spring pliers. Okay, so it's all relatively straightforward. You just pull those springs out. There's all the old ones. Here's the new ones. Just a couple things to note at the bottom here. There's one spring, looks like, coming from the center back here. That'll hook into your right shoe. And then your pads sit in where my thumb is there. One on the left and right. Okay, so when you pull the emergency brake cable, this pulls back, and that's what separates the two brake shoes, applying pressure to the inside of that drum over there. Okay, at this point I'm going to remove this clip down here that's holding on the parking brake cable. Once that clips off, I'll be able to pull this out, and then we'll unhook it from this side and then go to the front of the cable and start removing the clips associated with it. Okay, now that that clip is removed, I'll pull this out of its holder, then unhook it there. Okay, so we're just underneath the car, and to access the front part, the front connection of the parking brake cables, you have to remove this entire shield that goes across the entire width of the car. There's about maybe 6 or 8 bolts that are 10mm. You pull those off, and then I just slid that whole shield down. Now we have access to remove all the brackets for the parking brake cables, and then you can see the connection points up here where it'll feed through up into the parking brake. Okay, and to disconnect it from the parking brake, you can come into the center console, lift this up, pull this little piece of carpet trim off of here, then you'll have access to the parking brake cables. You can see just down here, got the left and right, so we'll slip those out of there, pop them out, and pull out the old cable, then we'll be able to put the new one in. Here's the new cable on the passenger side, hooked up. Got the clip back on there, and then there's 3 brackets. One of them I didn't have a bolt for. There's one there, one back here, and then there's supposed to be one up there that the bolt broke. So I just zip tied it there, and then you can see in the middle how the boot goes through the floor of the car. So we'll do this on the other side as well, and then we'll be able to put this trim plate back up. But first we're going to reassemble the drum components and put the disc back on, and then the brake caliper back on before we move to the other side. Okay, I just wanted to show you on the driver's side, I replaced the cable. I haven't pulled the wheel and replaced the springs and shoe yet, but I did replace the cable that goes into the back of the brakes there. It was missing the clip, so I'm going to have to address that on that side when I take the wheel off. Yeah, but it comes up here, one bracket, and so there's 1 bracket, 2 bracket, 3 brackets here, and then it comes up and goes through the floor here. So I ended up having to remove the center console, unfortunately, but it wasn't too bad to take off. There's 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 back here on the corners, and then there was, if you looked in from the top, there was, or sorry, no, from the back, you had to pull this thing out, and you could see 2 more bolts, and then I think there was 2 more down here. But either way, there's only like 6 or 8 screws and bolts holding it in, and then you can just pop the whole thing right up when you unhook the heated seats. But anyways, that's off, and it was kind of hard to get it seated into these little circle things that are just welded to the floor, but that's the way it's supposed to be. And then I had to loosen this adjusting nut here and then just up here to get them connected, and then I snugged them up a little bit. And actually I'm just gonna take the slack off of that when this is in the down position, get that kind of snug, and then that way when you pull this, it's nice and tight. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pull the parking brake cable, and you'll see how it operates. It'll spread, and then when I release it, it'll come back in. Okay, so one last look at the inner assembly, parking brake assembly, before we put the disc drum back on. So you can see the adjuster at the top. What we want to do when we put the drum over top is make sure that this is a snug fit. So if it's too loose, adjust this out. It'll spread the pads a little bit. Kind of put it on and off a couple times until it's you can feel just a little bit of friction. Otherwise, red spring up top. You got the two purple springs with the washers and pins. On the bottom, you have the silver spring going across. You can sort of see it, and then the bottoms of those bottoms of those shoes have to be seated in the grooves of those two. You can see those two grooves. That's where the parking brake cable pulls on. So once that's all like that, it would throw this guy back on. So one last thing, make sure this spins all right without hitting anything, and then we can go ahead and throw our drum over top. Now once it's back on, you want to make sure it can still spin with slight resistance. So that's pretty good. And if I go to pull the parking brake cable, it shouldn't spin at all. Press the pry bar. There we go. Can't even spin. Okay, now at this point, what I'm going to do is clean the front and back of the disc here, and then I'll throw the brake caliper back on. Caliper's back on, and at this point, we'd be done this side. We throw the wheel back on, but I still need to tighten up these lower strut bolts. Right, so for the parking brake cables, all we have to do is flip the car around and do the other side. At this point, we've replaced both of the parking brake cables. We'll do the springs and the shoes on the other side, and then we'll do a final adjustment on the inside, put the center console back in, and then we'll be done. So if you're looking to do the parking brake cables and the shoes associated with parking brake on your Hyundai Tucson, hopefully this video helped you, and thanks for watching. Cheers.